I love you, Heartworm.
Welcome to another episode of AutisHim, Black Fathers and Autism. I'm one of the hosts, Tyrone. I got my other hosts next to me, Nick, Lonnie, and Trav. Today we're going to be getting into sportsmanship. So we all have young men on this call, and so we all deal with the challenges of sportsmanship. So off camera, Trav was bringing up a situation, and so was Lonnie, that they kind of dealt with their kids and sportsmanship and it being a little challenging and their kids being a little upset. So I'm gonna start off with Trav. Trav, go ahead, man. Tell your story real quick.
Oh man, what a start. So just to kind of background about myself, I was big on sports, played football, ran track and field in high school, big sports junkie. I'm all about it. So I want to start out within my kids. Last year we put my oldest in soccer. Now I chose soccer because I want to try something that's diverse. Plus, my oldest has a lot of energy. So we put him in there. Mind you, at the time he was 5. So, it's really just a lot of back and forth, nothing too serious. He didn't really do too well as far as like sharing the ball. He didn't really want to do that. When the other team would score, he would throw a tantrum and fall out. It was to the point where a lot of the time I would have to go onto the field, and it's just like, man, I want my son to be able to just handle being out there playing. But at the same time, he doesn't understand that, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
All right, so we lost Trav for a minute. He'll hop back on in a second, but I'm gonna swing it over to Lonnie. Lonnie, you was telling us a story about your son at a bowling situation.
Yeah, we live close to a bowling alley, and I take him there a lot to the arcade. He loves the arcade, and it's pretty dope. Although the last time he went was horrible because the camp was there, and it was just a ton of, I couldn't deal with the noise. It was too much. But he's never made it through an entire game of bowling. So my best friend was in town. His family went out bowling, and I was going to force him to finish at least one game because he hasn't done it before. But he did great. He was bowling, taking turn, enjoying it. And he was winning. The kids were on one lane. The adults were in the other lane. But at the very end, he lost by a couple points. He was mad. He was angry and doing his thing. And so he doesn't act out or lash out. He more shuts down and gets angry or whatever. And so we were coaching him through that. And I was just proud he made it through one game. So I was like, cool, he did a good job. We can come back and practice. But he wanted to do a second game. So that was like, a big step for him to start a second game. And my daughter won the second game, but he was better with that. And so I'm going to plan on spending more time bowling, right? Because that's an activity that's easy to do. It's close and whatnot. So what's good, Trav? So it was overall success. I think we still deal with the how do you handle in the middle of an activity when they aren't able to necessarily to regulate and manage that. That's something to think about. That's an ongoing challenge of helping them get that practice.
Yeah, so I agree 100%. My son is not really big into sports at the moment. I tried to get him into sports when he was younger. I was his coach because I really wasn't letting nobody coach him. And he really didn't have, meltdowns or was upset about not being able to, execute like he's playing basketball. So, he can't really dribble. He can't really shoot. I was just trying to get him to play defense. Like I grew up playing defense. So I was trying to get him at least do that. And, he just really wasn't quite understanding the game, but he loved being out there with his teammates and everything. And now he doesn't really do it as much. But when it comes to sportsmanship, he is hella competitive when it comes to video games. So when it comes to his brothers and myself, when I play with him, like he has a hard time sometimes with not letting people win, but like with just winning in general. Like if I beat him, he may flip out on me. It just depends. Like if and I can honestly say that, you know, it's not all the time, but when he does, man, like one of his favorite game he plays is Smash Bros, right? If from my Smash Bros fans out there. And so he plays with his older brother all the time. And a lot of times, man, you know, he playing with his older brother. His brother been playing the game for years. So his brother's kind of a pro at it. And so, you know, I try to tell my older son, like, let him win sometime. My son be like, man, forget that. Like, let him win. And, like, you know, he be going in on him. Now, I will say that my son will beat him sometimes. But when he doesn't beat him, man, he gets upset, man. He'll have a meltdown. You know, we'll send him to his room. He'll have a meltdown in his room. And just trying to get him to kind of, you know, rationalize, like, hey, you're not always going to win. Like, you can't win all the time. And he doesn't really understand that concept sometimes, or he'll say he understands it. And then when he loses, he's like, forget all that. I should have won. So, you know, it's hard, man, trying to teach him that you're not going to win all the time. And, you know, I think, again, there's some days he's fine with it. Some days he's able to deal with it. There's some days where he's not able to deal with it. And I worry, like, when he starts like really engaging with, you know, other kids at like with video games and playing at a high level, that, you know, it's he may have a meltdown. I don't want to have a meltdown, and just trying to help him navigate that. Nick, what you think, man? Do your son have like sportsmanship challenges?
Well, yes and no. So he's not in organized sports right now. My son isn't in organized. He used to play soccer last summer. We have him in some other camps that he's not going to be able to play soccer this summer. However, when he's just playing, so my son loves to run. So when he's running and playing, if he's playing with another kid that he's not faster than or can't catch, say they playing tag or something, he will get upset and he's just, I'm not doing this no more. Like, so he may give it one other try, but if he doesn't see the success behind it, like, he's done. He's at least done for the next, half an hour to an hour. With that, he wants to move on to something else. And I think a lot of it has to do with, them, children possibly, once again, I'm not a therapist or a counselor or special educator. I'm just going off of my experience. It just seems like, in my experience, they're in their own world. And, being in your own world, I think you have the opportunity to, control what all goes on. And when something happens in your space that you don't have any control over, not having those barriers in place, like mentally, you I think they just, like, whatever the emotion is, that emotion is a big emotion now, and so if you're not able to manage those emotions, and in my experience, my son sometimes does not manage his emotions well. When those things are outside of his control, where he doesn't win, where he'll feel bad. My hope is that I try to jump in there so he doesn't internalize the negative energy of it all, and try to, coach him through it. Like Lonnie said, you're not going to win everything, So if you want to win, if you want to run faster than the other children or the other kid, then you're going to have to start running with the intention of getting faster, so that you're able to
You just
catch.
remind me of something. You said your son might blame himself.
Mhm.
Does he internalize it? I know we might have talked about this before. Have you had the autism discussion with your son? Does he blame it on the autism? Does he blame it on that, or is it?
It's just he doesn't blame it on autism. He knows he has it. We don't we it's a superpower. Him being
Yeah, that's what
autistic
we
is a
say too.
superpower. We don't
Yep.
look at it as a negative impact on his life, but he internalizes the experience of losing, not necessarily
Okay.
blaming it on autism. Then it becomes, I can't win. Like, I can't do it at all. And I can't creep in. And one of my largest concerns for my son is the I can'ts are now his overwhelming experience when it comes to things that are different. So if you're learning something new, the first emotion in my son's newness is negativity. And so we have to coach him through the newness of whatever this experience is, because he likes his routine, much like many of the kids that I've run across that are on a spectrum. They prefer their routine. So if you're accustomed to winning, pow, 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 I'm the fastest, I'm the greatest, I'm the quickest, and people celebrate you for that, and then you run across somebody who just blows you out of the water, dealing with those big emotions, meltdowns, the whole nine, we've had to deal with them. So we definitely want to make sure that the emotional management piece and the self actualization of it all for my son is a huge concern, because you're going to lose. Carl Lewis was the fastest man in the world for a long time, and then somebody beat him. I think Leroy Burrell beat him or something like that. You know what I mean? You'll set a time, and somebody later will break your record or something to that effect. So you're only going to be the greatest for so long, and then somebody comes along and they're faster than you, but you have to be able to deal with that. And so I guess that's the piece that we're trying to focus on, is the dealing with the emotions of it all, versus like, yeah, you can win, but you can lose too. So just try to win more than you lose if this is a sport that you choose to do. But you also got to work on, like, if you want to win, you got to keep on running. Like if my son wants to run track, like, you're going to have to run track. Like, get your exercise up, go out running, and get some track shoes and the whole nine if you want to win. If it means that much, you got to put the work towards it.
Trav, you want to jump back in, man, with the story you were telling about your son?
Yeah. What was the last thing you guys heard before I cut out?
I don't know, man. Just start from the beginning.
All right, so I'll condense it a bit. So my oldest was in soccer. As far as sportsmanship, it was a bit rough. He really didn't want to share the ball. When the opposing team would score, he'd have a tantrum, fall out on the field. I had to go out and kind of give him a pep talk to encourage him to stay in the game. And there was a lot of times where he just quit, and he'd tell coach like, "Hey, I just want to sit down." So he'd just sit on the side, and it's like, man, I really wanted him to try, but my wife was just like, "Hey, just let him just sit there. He'll get back in when he gets in." And sometimes he did, and sometimes he didn't. So it's been a bit rough. We took a year off. Like I said, we're thinking about trying again this fall since he has matured a bit, I believe. And then as far as just like summer activities, we recently just had a situation where he was playing basketball outside. I was like, "Hey, you got one more shot." Everybody's encouraging him to make it. He missed it. Fell out, had another tantrum because he missed a shot and felt like a failure. And I'm just like, "Hey, you're not. It's okay. You just got to keep shooting. You got to keep trying." But I think Nick mentioned it's just the factor of, when you run into an obstacle and you can't beat it, it just gets a bit rough. And that's kind of what my son's going through right now. But I'm up to the challenge to help him.
Yeah, I think Lonnie might have alluded to this. Actually, I think Nick might allude to this. The thing with my son and wanting him to understand that he can't win all the time, like it's impossible to win all the time. I don't want him to become a person that becomes obsessed with winning. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that you could look at some of the greatest achievers or athletes in the world, like a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant or a Muhammad Ali. You can name them all the greats, right? In every sport, that they've said you have to be obsessed with winning. That's what separates the regular winners to the winner, the people that win for real, right? That win a lot of the time, like the Tom Brady's of the world, things like that. Mm. That's great. That's great that people can be obsessed with winning and they can be that dominant in a certain sport or a field. It doesn't even have to be sports related. It could be anything. It could be being a lawyer, being a doctor, being the best, sanitation person you could be. Like, you could just have that mentality. I want him to be able to try to compartmentalize that and say, you know what, I want to be really good at something, but if I'm not super great at it, it's okay. Because as long as I'm trying my hardest and trying my best, then that's all right. Like, I still have a family that loves me. I'm still, a great person. I'm still, doing the best that I can. So that's the thing I feel with my son, is like being obsessed with winning and how hard and taxing that can be on your mentality when you don't achieve the things that you want to achieve. Because I think at one point in time, I was obsessed with winning. When I was younger and I was like really competitive in the sports, like I hated to lose. Like even in video games, like I would get upset, throw the remote control, like I would do all kind of stuff, right? I still kind of act like that a little bit now when I'm playing like Mario Kart with my kids. Like I don't know about y'all, but I used to be the shit at Mario Kart. And then it seemed like the more advanced it got, like when they got on the Switch, I suck at it. Like I cannot be my oldest kid to save my life. I've played for a long time trying to be my oldest, and I just can't do it. Like no matter how fast my car is, no matter what items I get, I just cannot seem to beat them. So at one point, I was obsessed with trying to be my oldest, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm a grown man. Why am I trying to focus all my time playing this video game with my kid? And so I think in all seriousness, with my son of just, hey, I don't always have to win, and I don't want him to become obsessed with it where it drains him and messes with his mentality and puts more stress on him than he needs, because he's going to have a stressful life just because of life, right? Not even because of his autism. He's just going to have a stressful life just because of life. I haven't met one person that does not have a stressful life. I don't care how happy they are. I don't care like what they believe in. I don't care. There's always stress just because you are alive, right? It's a great thing you are alive, but living, the stress just comes with it. So as y'all can see, Trav dropped off again, but it's all right. He's going to jump back on here in a minute. But anyway, Lonnie, man, so I got a question for you when it comes to the sportsmanship. So are you concerned, or do you have any concern with your son getting older, playing sports, or just whatever he wants to do with his life? Don't have to be sports related, and having that mentality? Or are you like, you know what, if he has it, it's all good. I don't care.
You mentioned video games, and we do a lot of work in the house, but we do a lot of video games. That's how we do stuff together. He's okay with losing. He's competitive. He will win, but our bigger issue is we had guests recently, right? And he wants to play his game until you beat the game. So he said, come play the game with me. He mean come beat the game with me. He don't mean 20 minutes. He mean 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
So we've been trying to get him out of, people like Ninja Turtles, but not for 2 hours, not 3 hours. So we're working on trying to get him off that,
right,
which has been a challenge.
Yeah.
But I think the issue with that sometimes, when he gets excited, I think sometimes his social skills, his ability to navigate spaces sort of like lessens, if that makes sense. And so
yes,
he might keep asking you the same thing: play the game with me some more, play the game with me some more. Or he might keep telling, he loves Good Burger, right? So he's always quoting Good Burger lines or Steve Urkel lines. And he was done with the repeating stuff, but that's picked up a little bit more. When he gets excited, he'll start repeating more, if that makes sense. And so I want to expose him to more stuff, but I'm nervous that when he gets stuck in some of the places he gets in the wrong crowds, kids won't be kind. He won't be able to navigate it. For example, we're going to camp next week, right? We're going to camp. You heard me right. Because I'm going to be at the camp with him. I'm doing a little chess clinic midday. So I'm dropping kids off. I'm going to be there doing work and whatnot, and then a chess clinic. But I'm worried about when they're doing the camp games and things, how he's going to navigate in that space if he's not interested. So sometimes he can be social into things, games that he likes, but if he don't like it, he gone. He's sitting down, zoned out. So I'm just not worried about competitiveness as much as the participation, being able to navigate those spaces, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
No, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Trav, do you, and I asked Nick this, I asked Lonnie this question. Do you fear, like, with that competitive nature, is that something that you want your kid to take with him in whatever he does? Or you're like, you know what, because for me, like Lonnie was saying, I want him to just do his best, right? I think having a competitive nature is great, but at the same time, like, it can be taxing and it can be stressful. With your child, Trav, okay with him being competitive, depending on what it is, or are you just kind of like, you know what, I don't even want you to go in this direction at all?
Yeah, I'm totally fine with them being competitive because I'm competitive myself, whether it's in, corporate or sports or anything. I am competitive myself, so I expect my kids to be also. But like I was kind of saying earlier, I just have to make sure they understand the importance of, hey, you're not going to win all the time, and you don't want to be a sore loser. You have to know how to lose sometimes, and that's totally fine.
So picking up where we left off, Nick, let me ask you this.
What's up?
So so your son is in karate.
Correct.
Are you seeing any competitiveness there, or is he just like, because your son is how old again?
My son is 8 going on 9.
8 going on 9.
Yeah.
So is he in the mentality where he's just like kind of having fun, or is he in there competitive? Like, no, I'm trying to really give it to some other kids.
He's trying to have fun, but he's competitive in trying to achieve his next ranking when it comes to karate. Um, I actually feel a little bit different about competitiveness when it comes to kids on the spectrum. I believe that if I think a lot of children on the spectrum have their thing. Like some kids are really good with numbers, some kids are really good with drawing, some kids are really good with athletics and they are on the spectrum, right? For me, I think when it comes to the competitive piece, if it is their thing, not that you're imposing it on them as a parent, some kids that are on a spectrum, they have like something that they're really good at. Some of them is writing, like they can write sonnets and poems, and like that's their thing. If sports is your child's thing that comes naturally, once again, let me say that comes naturally, not something that you're, forcing them into, then I believe that you can kind of, well, they'll probably hyper focus on it themselves. Like they'll probably do all of the things that's necessary because that's their thing. In that case, I think you just do your best to try to manage the emotions that come along with the winning and the losing to try to make sure that they're good sportsmen. Um, but if that is their thing, like I don't, I don't recommend anybody holding their child back on something positive. If it's something positive, athletics, academics, art, whatever, like let them go, let them flourish. Just make sure that as their parent, you're trying to provide the appropriate boundaries so that they're not hurting themselves or overworking themselves and that there's still a level of balance in their life because they can I guess some children that are on a spectrum can hyper focus and they may read all day and they don't eat lunch or they're reading and they don't have dinner because they've hyper focused in a given space. I just think that we as parents just try to manage the emotions of it all and try to make sure that our kids are as healthy and as happy as possible. But if it comes to competitiveness, if that's a superpower of theirs, that's positive. Once again, that's in a positive direction. I think you can let them go with parental boundaries. Like make sure that they're managing it appropriately.
Yeah. You know what you just remind me of? My kid isn't the most coordinated and whatnot, and dexterity with sometimes isn't the best, but I really, really, really push him academically. And on occasion, when he doesn't get something or when he like messes up, I think I can be too rough, if that makes sense. I reckon, and it's kind of like it's just the same as in sports. Don't miss that basket. Come on, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I gotta check myself better than what I do about certain things. And so sometimes he can be a superstar in math or long division, for example. But every now and then he has an off day, and I don't necessarily respond to that in the same way. And so um, I think that if he was neurotypical, it's the way I grew up, sort of competitive. He wanted the sports, but I sort of pushed that into academic realm of like trying to drive there. And so I got to get better about, because it's like you got the autism. I'm like, okay, what can he be good at? What can he be good at? He's showing success in this area. How can I push it to make it even better? And so I got to check myself. And sometimes I got to just, dude, relax. The kid, he's a kid. And so,
And I have to do the
I got
same.
to work on
Yeah,
that.
you're trust me, Lonnie. You're not alone in that. I'm the same way. I try to find a level of balance. It's not easy, especially with academics, because I try to channel my son in his academics as well. Um, but I'm trying to also I'm trying to change my language behind it, because for a long time I would tell my son that he's an intelligent kid, and I'm trying to change my language because I don't want him to focus on the destination. I want him to focus on the journey. So I'm trying to change my language. Instead of saying he's a smart kid, I try to change my language to say he's a hardworking kid. Hard work,
Okay. I like that.
stay focused, hard work is what I'm saying now. Like, stay focused, hard work. You're a hard worker. I'm trying to get away from him just looking at academics, but looking at the process that he can apply to academics, to athletics, to his life. If you work hard, you can achieve a goal. You may be able to achieve your goals, but focus on the work. Like, keep working this, work hard, put your energy and your effort into it. It'll work out the way it's supposed to. Maybe not the way you want to, the way it's supposed to. And so now I'm trying to instill a second half of that, which is, it may not work out the way you want it to work out, even after working hard. Because we all know you can work hard all your life, and it may not be you may not achieve the vision for your life you have, but if you look at your life, you still have a good life. You know what I mean?
You
So
just reminded me of something. I did my student teaching. There was a kid. It was actually three siblings, three boys. They all on the spectrum in this middle school, and they had different sort of manifestations of autism. Like, one was really social and popular, but he's on the spectrum. But the other two were different. And the one brother was, I thought he was completely nonverbal, but he was. I was able to get him to speak a couple times. I called my mom. I called my aunt. Like, guess what? I was proud. I was like happy. And during my student teaching, but he was really good at math despite being limited verbally, right? And but his dad was hard in the paint with that. His dad really drove and pushed that. I found out because he was always working way ahead in his math book, always way ahead, because his dad was pounding that. I think I can be that way sometimes. I want to check that, but his dad was, I'm sure, thinking, my son has these challenges, but here in math, he's successful. So he was in the regular math class where he spent the majority of his day in the AU, the autism classroom, but he was in the regular math class. And so that was dope to see. But
Yeah, I agree with y'all. I especially agree with Nick when he talks about, every child has their thing and that there needs to be a healthy balance of help pushing them towards that thing. My struggle with what Nick said, because I think he's right, but my struggle with it is that once, like, for example, my kid doesn't do great, he dwells on it. And when he dwells on it, trying to get him to understand, like, hey, it isn't always going to work out, is the tough part, because he dwells on it a lot. And we all know dwelling on things, especially negative things, or things that you deem negative, can cause depression, can cause anxiety, can cause all of those things. So that's my struggle with trying to allow my son to be competitive, because my son's thing is sea life. Like, he loves sea animals. He wants to be a marine biologist. He is stuck on being a marine biologist, and I'm going to push him and support him in that direction because that's what he wants to do. But when something doesn't go his way, if he can't say, for example, we go to an exhibit and they don't have a certain animal, right? He'll talk about that animal not being there for a long time. And he'll keep telling me and his mom, like, hey, okay, for example, the mantis shrimp wasn't there today, Dad. I'm like, I know, son. And he'll keep bringing it up where it bothers him that wasn't there because he thought it was going to be there, right? So that's my whole thing of, like, helping your kids in their passion, and if it doesn't go right, again, this is just my son. I don't know about everybody else's kid that has ASD, but they dwell on it, and that's the part of I'm trying to help him navigate how to cope with his feelings and understand that you may expect something, but then you may be disappointed, and that's okay. Like, you can be disappointed for a little bit, but then you have to eventually move on. So that's my struggle in that round.
You just reminded me of my kid is going to the 5th grade, and then my younger two are going to 3rd grade. I have them all doing the same 4th grade curriculum this summer for my oldest to just review and get more comfortable. But the kids asked me about math with letters. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm showing them variables, what a variable is. And like, they like this. I don't know what the hell you talking about. And they upset. They mad they ain't getting it. But I'm like, don't worry about it. It's your teacher. I'm no good. I got to get better teaching you, right? So I introduced yet. Remember when you couldn't do this? Remember when you couldn't do this, but you got it? And so that's been a big help of reminding them of past successes and sort of starting to build that script. And so I'm real big into that social stories and whatnot, and just giving them examples of what to expect and how to work through it. And so they do Japanese. My wife's half Japanese, and so my son on the spectrum, he's like has a good memory, so he loves it. And the animals part, he know all the animals. He's like boom, 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 boom. And he's always talking in the speech therapy, talking about animals, and I'm like, okay, cool, but I think it's just reminding them about those when they couldn't do stuff in the past. We've had success, but it's taking years to get him there, but we've had success there.
Trav, I know you keep dropping out, my brother. Go ahead and say what you got to say, man. I don't want you to jump out again. And there it goes again. All right.
You better call AT&T Spectrum and say, "Give my money back."
Yeah.
I'm trying to get him to use his phone. I don't know if he got my message though, because that phone might be better. But yeah, so I watched my son get better at his competitiveness. Like I say, he doesn't do it all. He doesn't get upset all the time. So that's gotten a lot better. Another thing that I worry about when it comes to competitiveness and sportsmanship is that when it's time for him to like when he plays with other kids for an extensive period of time, like we're not talking about 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Like if he plays with a kid like all day, like he does with his cousin, like and someone his age, how is he going to handle that? Because when you're dealing with a 5-year-old, you can pretty much control the situation because you're older, right? But when you're dealing with somebody your age, it's a little different. So I'm wondering how he's going to be able to navigate that, because he really hasn't had any incidents with anyone his age. He's pretty much gotten along with everybody for the most part. And so because he's doing the virtual school with live instruction, I'm wondering once he starts like interacting, because we're putting him in stuff, he's interacting with, certain kids. I have a best friend who has a kid around his age, and they actually did hang out together for a long time, and they actually got along very well. But when you start hanging out with someone for, days at a time and weeks and months and years, like, it's not always going to be great. But I'm wondering how he's going to be able to handle things that don't go his way, especially when they was playing video games, because they were playing video games at one point in time. And it was me, him, my best friend, my best friend's daughter, and then his middle child, and my son. We playing Mario Kart, and my son pretty decent at Mario Kart. So he kind of saying little smart remarks, like when they get hit by, shell, get hit by items, he like, like, saying little stuff. And so I'm like, yo, like, hey, it's stop. Like, don't do that. Like, to be a good sport about it. And so he got a couple of, other remarks saying, and then he kind of stopped. But, he might say something to the wrong kid, and he might say something, back. And, I don't know how he's going to be able to handle that. So, I mean, he can snap with me and my other kids all day, but, it's different when it's coming from somebody you don't know that well. So, yeah, I worry about that, man. I think about that a lot, how he's going to be able to navigate that with someone that's his age and someone he's going to hang around for a long period of time. Does anybody else have that worry?
Go
Yeah,
ahead, Trav.
yeah, definitely. Especially when you get to talking cash, like man, chill out a little bit. You know, it's cool to talk a little bit, but then, like you said, sometimes you go too far, and then boom, you lose, and now you feel crazy. But it's fun to talk a little smack. You know, when we play against each other and stuff, we talk a little smack. But he's pretty good at the video games, man. These kids got that down pat.
Yeah, that's it's crazy because
Mhm.
we grew up with video games, like, and now they're really growing up
Right.
with video games, like from birth, right? And so like they're more talented than I was at his age. Like he picks up on stuff very quickly. Just technology in general, right? That's with this generation. They just pick up on tech very quick because they're born with it, right? Go ahead, Nick. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you actually didn't. With games and gameplay, I actually played a little bit, but I had siblings that played games all day long. I really wasn't big into gaming even growing up. I played, a Mario Brother game here and there. And my son, he's really not big into like video games. He would prefer to watch something and draw it. And so, he over the weekend we went to visit family, and there's this video about the body parts, and it talks about the eyes, the lungs, the pharynx, the liver. Like he's this the whole video is like 40 minutes. My son drew all of the body parts on a piece of paper that he saw in the video. So I think for him, for my son, video is a part of his learning. So one way that he picks up information is through watching like a educational YouTube video. So and that's kind of how he supplemented some of his education. He can watch something that, of course, it can't be boring to him, but he can watch something and learn from it and pick it up, and then he'll start to draw it, and then next thing you know, he's starting to talk to different people about the different body parts. Your skin is the largest organ, and he'll start spouting out facts about it. On top of the fact, he falls asleep with his encyclopedia book and wanted to take it to his camp today. Now, this book is like 700 pages, but he wanted to put it in his book bag and take it to camp. My wife is like, no. But so it just kind of depends. It just kind of depends on, like I was saying, the interest of your child. But when it comes to like the competitive nature of it all, just trying to make sure that he has an opportunity to realize, like I said before, that that different kids learn different ways, and I know my son he tries to do a little trash talk, but what I'm trying to keep him from doing is starting that even in the play, because here's what I do know. uh, if we did it around the house, if my wife and I trash talk and my son picks it up, he will think it's okay to trash talk with somebody else. You know what I'm saying? And like, we can't control anybody else's child. You say the wrong thing to the wrong child, you might get hit in your mouth. And I'm not saying that's positive, but I can't control somebody else's child because we don't know how they're going to react to trash talk. They could really get upset. So I try not to infuse it. And I tell myself, we don't tease, like no teasing, because you don't want anybody to talk ill will about you. So don't talk any ill will about anybody else, even when it comes to competitive things, where in situations you might think you're good at, but there's always somebody better, because people are always out there learning and growing just like you are.
I ain't gonna lie, I didn't taught my kids how to talk trash. They good. They good at it too. All three of them, they can go hard to luck. And so I'm teaching them how to use it appropriately though. But sometimes I always tell my daughter though, like, you gotta be able to fight. If you want to talk fly, if you can't move them hands,
You're gonna get beat up.
you gotta do a cost benefit analysis on that equation if you want to survive it. So they good at talking trash. I'm proud of them.
I'm with you. Like my son he's very witty. He's very witty, and he will say some slick stuff in a minute. And I told him, I said, all right, like even with me, he'll say a little slick stuff, And sometimes I'll be like, that's a little too slick. Like you gotta watch that. And he'll say, oh, I'm sorry, Dad, I'm sorry, but yeah, I'm with you. Like my son, he learned from me, he learned from his siblings. Like he be going in, and it's hard, man, because like you said, you gotta have hands. If so, you might say something to the wrong kid, they put these paws on you quick. And so I'm trying to just teach them, like you said, to use it appropriately. Like make sure you got a relationship with the person before you just start talking junk. Like when he was going in saying little slick stuff when they was getting hit by mushrooms and stuff and shells. He was just like, oh, he's like, y'all weak. So I was like, hey, yo, you can't say that, man. You haven't even hung out with him like that before. You can't say something like that. And the thing about it is they didn't really catch some of the things that he was saying because they was really into the game. But I'm listening to what he's saying. I'm like, okay, don't do that. Like, don't say stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, it's tough, man. The sportsmanship, this competitiveness is hard. It's hard to navigate because I really stress that dwelling on the disappointment or dwelling on not winning. That's really something I see in my son that's going to be a struggle for him. Like really understanding that you will have disappointment in life and you will not win everything, and that's okay. And how to get him to not keep repeating it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again in his head is going to be a tough one. And Nick, I think you said something about really just teaching your kid how to really teaching them how to just appropriately, like parents don't push your own hopes and dreams on your kids, appropriately help them and slightly push them in the direction that they want to go in, not the direction you want them to go in. And that's not just for, parents with kids with ASD. That's for all parents. Like, don't push your kid in the direction because you didn't get a chance to live your dream. Now you want to live it through your kids, man. So we got so many examples of that. I won't even call out no names, but it's just, no, don't do that, man. Because I could have easily made my kids hoop, and I was just like, you know what? They don't want to hoop, and I ain't gonna force them. That's more stress on me when I'm out there trying to get them to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning and work out and dribble the ball and shoot, and we gonna do drills, and they don't want to do it. That's more stress on me. Like if you want to do it, you let me know when you want to do it. Like, but I'm gonna tell you, if you really want to do this, we gonna do this. Like, and if you don't want to do it, we ain't gonna do it. Like all my sons try basketball. They ain't really like it. I'm like, all right, cool, no problem. My one son, he a skateboarder. He killing the game right now in skateboarding. I'm like, dope. Like, I wish I could skateboard. I can't do it. My other son's really big into music. That's his thing. All right, cool. And now my youngest son is in being a marine biologist. And then my oldest, they was going to be a teacher, and they kind of swayed away from that. And they just trying to figure out what they want to do, but I'm not pushing them in a direction. I'm like, y'all let me know what y'all want to do, and I'll support it. Like, I'm going to support what you want to do with your life. And I'm not going to say I'm going to support everything. Let me be clear. Like, we're going to have a conversation about some things, but it doesn't mean at the end of the day, you my child, I'm not going to support you. So there it is with that. And Trav is gone again. So, oh man,
we might gotta redo this one.
we keep jumping in. Anyway, bro, this is AutisHim, Black Problems in Autism, and we out.